But now what we're looking for is where the actual retracement is going to take place. So I think, in my opinion, I think 42K is easily baked in. I think the biggest question is, do we come down further to kind of like the 35, 36 fib level? Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of WAGMI TV. The fateful day has arrived. The long-awaited Bitcoin ETF has been approved. There have been multiple that have been approved, and it's kind of sent shockwaves through the crypto community. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and give you guys the latest on that, and then the potential implications and what's to come with those ETFs. As a reminder, this is not financial advice. Please do your own research before investing in any of these coins or projects or products discussed in these videos. So, Mad, I think I'm going to kick it over to you. Get us started.
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, right, monumental shift in the crypto world. I think there's a ton to unpack with this, a ton that's going to come over time, but I think it's important to highlight some of the major players in the new ETF landscape. There's about 11 of them, so won't share all of them, but some of the big ones that we've obviously all heard of are, Fidelity, iShares, ProShares, ARK has theirs. So tons of groups actually got approved today, which is super exciting. I believe eight or so of them. I'm not sure of the exact number there. Custodian by Coinbase. So a ton going on in the space. Obviously, everyone was kind of assuming that this was going to happen. So you just wonder what this is actually going to do to price. But I think we've talked a lot about the pros in the past, right? I think it's really great from an accessibility standpoint. Like Bitcoin just became way more accessible for mainstream investors. They don't really have to deal with, some of these quote unquote shady exchanges that they were dealing with in the past, or necessarily cold wallets. Some folks were a little scared of the cold wallets and things like that. So now you can, pick up Bitcoin exposure through just a regular brokerage account, which is super exciting for a lot of folks. We've talked about institutional adoption, right? There's kind of the green light for big players like hedge funds and pension funds to actually jump into the Bitcoin game without proxies like things like MicroStrategy or GBTC. I guess from a regulation standpoint, it is a little bit funny, right? You have the SEC approving this after all of the battles that they were having over the last couple of years that we've talked about with, Gensler and all those folks. So kind of had to bite his tongue and say that Bitcoin's okay. And it's kind of been funny. We've been watching some of these alts spike pretty heavily with the news. So Bitcoin ETF comes out, and then all of a sudden these unregistered securities are also going crazy with it. So that's kind of my take on it. There's a lot of pros to it. I'm sure there's going to be some cons coming up, but I know we're going to talk a little bit about the price action, what we could potentially see. Is this maybe a sell the news event, something like that? But anything else that you guys wanted to add to that?
No, just in typical Gary Gensler fashion, he sends out the tweet yesterday and then claims his Twitter account got hacked, the SEC's Twitter account got hacked, and then what do you know, the day after, 10, 11 different Bitcoin ETFs launched. So it's a great day for crypto. I feel like this is just another big L for Gary Gensler and the SEC. So yeah, I don't have many thoughts, but yeah, let's dive into the price action.
Yeah, see, we'll have you take that first. You got the chart up.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm happy to dive in here a little bit. So with the ETF approval, if some of you guys are watching the charts this morning, we had kind of a initial pump right when it got approved. That's really just like this last green candle here that you're seeing. And that took us up to, around 49K, just shy of 49K. But what you can see is that that's right where one of the key fib levels, 618, lies at. And it's also a huge resistance point at the end of this kind of cup here that's formed. So that's a massive resistance point. Like, it's going to take a lot more than just the Bitcoin ETF approval to get through that, a lot more volume. And so, it was somewhat expected to see this bounce off of this fib. But now what we're looking for is where the actual retracement is going to take place. So I think, in my opinion, I think 42K is easily baked in. I think the biggest question is, do we come down further to kind of like the 35, 36 fib level? And honestly, I think that's a healthy retracement in my mind. And I'm a little bit biased too, because I love the cup and handle formation. So that's when you get kind of this big U shape over a long period of time. And then you get the chart to retrace to a support level, almost like in a downward trajectory like this. And then a lot of times you'll get a ricochet and a bounce off of that support out of a cup and handle. So that's a bullish chart pattern. But obviously, we have a long way till we get there. But anyway, those are kind of some of the key levels I was looking at, and what we saw today with the ETF, and maybe what we'll see in a couple of weeks or months.
Yeah, and it feels like.
That's
Oh, go ahead, Mata.
No, go ahead, Ev. I'm going to pull up the chart here. I thought it was kind of funny we had some confluence between our charts, but go ahead, make your comment real quick, and I'll throw that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it was kind of, I guess, and maybe in some people's mind, it was expected that the day the Bitcoin ETF officially launched or was available to investors, that we would see this huge inflow, this huge demand, really seeing price spike super heavily, and I think, maybe pulling or peeling the onion back a little bit, a lot of this Bitcoin that's available on these funds has already been bought up by these firms, and like we talked about, their brokers, Coinbase. So a lot of this Bitcoin could already be living in Coinbase wallets. And so, that's potentially why we didn't see this enormous price action today, was because, these are very smart people. This is Wall Street. They've done their buying ahead of time before these financial products were offered. And so that's really a big reason why we didn't see this, 20K, 10K spike in price today. But yeah, go ahead with what you were going to go into, Mata.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, Ev. And you got to wonder, it's not like this is something new, right? They've been thinking about this, talking about this. It's been verbalized. They've been thinking, just like the rest of the public, that this is probably something that's, coming down the pipeline. You got to think that they were probably fairly prepared for something like this. So it is interesting to think how much of this buying over the last year really was some of these institutions, right? From that perspective as well. I think it's interesting. So what I have here are the yellow lines are some longer term trend lines, and some support and resistance lines here in blue. So very much like Sia said, right at the 618, there's actually a pretty decent resistance, both from the 618 Fibonacci and just generally from some of these resistance zones. We still haven't really, we've pierced it, but haven't been able to close above it, which is usually not a great sign. Oddly enough, I had a support zone right around the 36K mark as well, which I know is called out in the Fibonacci levels. So I think if we did see some sort of pullback from this, which wouldn't be totally unforeseen, right? I mean, this is fairly overextended, I would say, in the short term. So that's what assets do, right? That's what healthy assets do, especially, right? There are going to be pullbacks, and that's when a lot of folks are going to hopefully try to get in and not get too scared of some of those pullbacks. So other than what Sia said, I think I'm in a lot of agreement. We'd love to see this go up and above this, close above, and then retest some of these resistance zones. And if it does that, we can obviously go and start to test some of these, potential all-time highs or some of the pseudo all-time highs around 60K, so on and so forth. But if we do get a pullback, I think that 36K is definitely in play. And then you got to wonder, you have quite a bit of support here around this 31K, 31.5 level that we talked a ton about a few months ago as some major resistance. So now that it's flipped that into support, is going to have some pretty serious support there as well. So, from a low range, we're looking in that 25K range, but you never know really what's going to happen. You just got to make sure you're prepared on all fronts for anything from that perspective. So I would say, could it drop into the 20s again? It definitely could, right? Who knows if this was a, buy the rumor, sell the news type of event. But if we really can stand on top of some of these resistance zones and create them as support, we're looking really great on Bitcoin and the crypto market as a whole. So not quite bearish or bullish yet. Would love to see how the next couple of days turn out. But either way, super exciting news to actually get Bitcoin approved from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great analysis, Mata, and I agree. Like, it's hard to know whether we're fully bullish or fully bearish. I feel like we got to stay neutral at this point, and until we break that 50-55K mark, I don't think we can go full, moon boy yet. So it'll be interesting to see what happens up next. But as you stated, Mata, like everyone's got to stay prepared and be ready for whatever. But I think it's more so just a long term, it's long term very, very exciting for the crypto industry to see this actually come to fruition. So I think that's all we got for you guys today. Let us know in the comments if you guys are excited too, if you're holding Bitcoin long term, and drop a like as well if you got some value out of the video. But until next week, wag me.